We're seeing central banks like India, China, and others buying a lot of gold at the moment.
Yes.
The reason they're doing that is because if something breaks in the financial system of the world as it is, it'll be time for a new global monetary system. And those who have the most gold will get a seat at the table and possibly call the shots.
The global economy is failing at a level unprecedented in modern history.
Right.
We are in for a socioeconomic and geopolitical crisis, the likes of which are unimaginable.
I mean, we've been watching that confidence piece and that credibility piece erode over time. And so the time to get in position is when? I mean, have we bought ourselves a little bit of a reprieve?
It looks like it. And I've spoken to people and I said, if I was one of these venture capitalists or had billions in the bank, I would be running to not transfer it to JP Morgan, but maybe get some physical gold and silver.
There's going to be a false flag event that'll get the people united against Russia and go to war.
Right.
And here's the fact. You brought it up before, and I'm going back to it. I wanted to build a scenario. Are they going to do what you said? Bring us totally into the new world order, robbing us of our rights, our freedom, our money, and yes. They already did with the COVID war. They're going to do with this because when all else fails, they take you to war.
On the Britcoin, so Great Britain's CBDC.
Britain is quite advanced in terms of bringing in the central bank digital currency, otherwise known as the CBDC. Where they've got to, they're passing the Financial Services Bill 2023. It's just at the committee stage at the moment, going through the House of Lords. And then it will get the royal assent, and that will give the Treasury the power to make various rules related to digital currencies, specifically the CBDC. We also have a paper from the Bank of England, which it's several hundred pages long, it's more than 100 pages long, in which they describe the CBDC. Obviously, it's a consultation paper, so it's not finalized yet, and they do say no decision has yet been made. But I think it's clear it will happen. And if you look at the job postings on LinkedIn for the Treasury and for the Bank of England, you'll find that both of them have various job openings for people who can be policy consultants and so forth on the CBDC. So there is no doubt it's coming.
You know what scares me the most about that? I mean, there are a few things. When you look at the CBDCs and the most current report that I've read on them, number one, do you know that they actually have changed the definition of money? Where it used to be a tool of measure, a medium of exchange, a short-term tool of value, so you're fairly paid for your labor, and a long-term store of value so that no matter when you use it, it always retains that value and you're fairly paid for your labor. I don't know when they did it because I couldn't find, they just cleaned everything up so nicely. But number one, they took the fourth one out, the long-term store of value, which is really more honest since we know that these dollars lose value, the longer you hold them. But when they bring in the CBDCs, they have also eliminated officially in that system, once they do that, then the third spot is a short-term store of value because you will have your pay or any money directly deposited into a negative yielding account, and they can determine how low that yield's going to go. So you're not ever going to be fairly paid, and money is now simply a tool of measure and a tool of barter. Wait a minute. We work for this money. So they have to hide that, and they'll use war for sure to do it. I mean, they do that every time, 100% of the time. Whenever there is a crisis, there is also a banking consolidation. And that's what's happening right now. A lot of people are moving those that are paying attention anyway, are moving their funds out of the mid-range banks and the small banks into the big banks.
I mean, in the US, there's over 4,000 banks, according to the FDIC. So it's still uh, quite, not so centralized, even though the big Wall Street banks and like the other GSIB banks are huge. But here in the UK, we only have 4 or 5 big banks. So we've already been centralized big time. I think the country that needs it more, not that it's a good thing, but in the perspective of the globalists, is the US. They'd want to see the US banking system probably just be a few big banks
It's easier to
in each.
control.
Well, we're obviously in places like Lebanon. We can see they're burning the banks in
Yes.
rage because the banks won't give them their money. People had deposited their money in the Lebanese banks, and well, they were earning a pretty high interest rate until they couldn't give it back to you. I think you could get 14% on US dollars in a Lebanese bank 2 years ago, but now they won't give it back. They don't have the money. The population thinks the government is corrupt. The population thinks the government has been taking bribes and God knows what else. Whether that's true or not, I have no idea. But basically, the population are starving. They can't get money out of the banks. They can't buy oil to even cook their food. It's a problem. And people are saying, well, perhaps it won't happen here, but it could happen anywhere if there is a certain level of distrust in the banks, or distrust in the government, or distrust in the currency, or if we have another banking crisis. I mean, we mustn't forget that commercial banks, which is the vast majority of them, are taking your money and my money and lending it to somebody that you personally and I personally wouldn't be willing to lend it to. For example, a spotty teenager who wants to buy an Xbox, or maybe his mum and dad. But either way, it wouldn't be what I'd be lending money for. I wouldn't be letting people run up huge bills on their credit cards, knowing that I could never get it back unless they can borrow more. So the day of reckoning from time to time does come individually in banks, and sometimes it comes in all the banks at the same time. And when that happens, you might worry if you kept too much money in the bank and you haven't got other things to spend.
Well, there are reportedly 190 companies or banks that have been companies that have been impacted by what happened with SVB all over the world. And there are lots of calls of action on your neck of the woods over in Great Britain. So can you explain more about, how and why and what you think about that?
Yeah, I think 200 of these fintechs, venture capital, small tech companies or startups, they sent a letter and all their CEOs or chiefs signed it to the chancellor, I think, over the weekend, because for some reason they all banked with SVB UK, and that's going on there as well. And they bailed them out, even though they're not calling it a bailout.
Right.
So what the government did, and the Bank of England, they met with HSBC and SVB UK, and they engineered a purchase of SVB UK, not SVB, the whole bank, but just the UK arm, by HSBC for £1. So, and I heard rumors, this is just rumors, that HSBC was very exposed to SVB UK, but I think it's outrageous that we have to basically bail out the taxpayers to bail out venture capital firms that probably,
Exactly.
I would say 95% of them won't succeed anyway. But we have this mentality, not just here, but everywhere in the West, that governments have to help business. And here they think that we are like the center of fintech and we can't let these firms fail. And the other thing I would add is a lot of these firms are involved in payment system,
Yes.
even blockchain. So they're probably going to be heavily involved in the Bank of England digital currency, because the Bank of England is saying that the CBDC wallet is not going to be provided by the Bank of England, but by third parties. So can you imagine if they had let all these 200 companies collapse? That would have delayed, I think, their plans for a digital currency, probably by a few years.
That is a phenomenal insight.
I have a photograph of me and John Connolly. He was the governor of Texas that took the bullet in the back sitting in front of JFK. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to meet me back in 1992. I have a photo of me, him, and his wife, Nellie, in front of the book depository, the first time back since the assassination. As we're walking back into the Anatole Hotel, he said to me, "Gerald, I read your book, Trend Tracking, Time Magazine, far better than Mega Trends." And he said, "And I know your heart's in the right place." Now remember, this is the guy that took the bullet in the back sitting in front of Kennedy. He was also the Treasury Secretary under Richard Nixon, a Republican, when they took the United States off the gold standard. We're going back in, he said to me, "I know your heart's in the right place." He said, "But you don't have a clue what's going on. And neither do the American people. Because if they did, there'd be a revolution in this country."
Yes. Oh, you just gave me chills.
But they are, to all intents and purposes, two different things, which will look like the same thing, just like dollars and cents are effectively the same thing. The important point about it being two different things is that at any moment in time, they can actually make them different things which are not one-to-one. Right. So if the economy is starting to get into trouble because everybody's bringing their pounds home and trying to do something bad with the economy, they can simply bottleneck how much you can move into CBDCs and run the economy on the CBDC without worrying about the old legacy currency, which will now be starting to wither away. Mm-hmm. Because the minute they bottleneck you and say you can't freely put money in and out of CBDCs, which is what you'll be spending in the shops, people are going to panic a little bit and want to do it. And then, of course, they'll close the door. And you'll find that the old currency starts to be valued at a discount to the new currency, the new CBDC. Now, there's no proposal that that will happen by the government or the Treasury or the Bank of England at the moment, but it will make it a lot easier for us to have a currency reset, i.e., there's a huge sell-off in the government bond market. Britain can't finance itself, for example, and they have to shut the door and start again with a new currency. If that was to happen, and it's only a question of time before something like this does happen somewhere, and if it happens somewhere, it'll be in a large Western economy. It'll be replicated very, very quickly around the world. People will panic everywhere in the world.
Now, with this promise to guarantee all accounts, I think that might calm people down for them to leave their money in the bank. But I think the smart money, they don't buy it.
No.
Yeah, and the people who don't have 250,000, they'll just keep it there because it's insured, but they're going to lose, as I said, the purchasing power.
Even if they don't lose the actual dollars, I mean, the purchasing power, and you can see it on the FRED, FRED, for those that are watching, purchasing power of the consumer dollar, it just keeps going down, 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 and that's official. I mean, I still wonder how much of this, the wars and all the debt markets and all of that, how much is that about hiding the real transition?
100% hiding it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They get the people's minds. Look at people that can't afford. The price of eggs only went up 49.7% last month, from year to year. The price of beef, the price of this, the price of that.
They have control of inflation now, right? Aren't they getting inflation under control, Gerald?
Oh, yeah, Yellen yelled it out on 60 Minutes. This is the Yellen that said it wasn't existing and then it was only temporary. So again, you're 100% correct.